program is brought to you by Strategies for Wealth Management.
Are you intimidated when it comes to retirement planning and thinking about your finances? If you are, you're not alone. Hi, welcome to Smart Retirement. My name is Laura Lehrhaupt. I'm joined with my husband, Michael Lehrhaupt.
Hello, everyone.
We are in the business of retirement planning, and we are here today to share some thoughts and education tips all around retirement planning and actually how to take the intimidation out of it. There's no need to be scared, nervous, or feel inferior when it comes to planning your future. I think it's a big hiccup for a lot of people.
It is, and as professionals, we're guilty of it. You know, as professionals, a lot of our professionals will throw out terminology, and we don't even realize sometimes people don't understand what
industry mumbo jumbo.
In any industry, it's true for.
It is.
But like, you know, whether I have someone coming over and, you know, they want to plan some landscaping and they throw some terms out to me, I'm like, I don't know, you're the expert, you know.
Right.
So, you know, in our industry, you know, we use a lot of mumbo jumbo words that, like, maybe people don't realize. Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
So this is Smart Retirement. We want to make you smarter.
There you go.
And we want to go over some of these
Right.
things and kind of help you understand what some of these words and mumbo jumbo actually mean. Today is informative. We're not trying to give you advice here. We're just trying to inform you about some of the definitions of things and what they mean.
And I think it's really important. I always felt, I don't know about everybody else, but I always feel like education makes me feel more confident. So we're not going to throw the book at everybody and be like, you need to know all these terms. We're talking about a general understanding. And I think it's important we start off by identifying the different types of investors that are out there, because there's different categories. Some people maybe cross over a little, but just for explanation, we're keeping it super simple. We've identified 4.
Yes,
so let's let everyone know what the four different types of investors there are out there.
And by the way, just because you're a certain kind of investor doesn't have anything to do with your gains or returns you might be getting. Please understand that. Because obviously it's all speculative, and that's why be careful, because we're saying get professional advice.
Always.
So today's more about informative.
Yeah.
But the first kind is called the skilled investor.
Yeah.
And a skilled investor is familiar with certain terminology and certain techniques, puts and calls, and all kinds of different terminology.
You just threw out mumbo jumbo. I don't know if you all caught that. He just threw out puts and calls, and I know it.
But
I know what that is.
See, a skilled investor
would know that.
Focuses on that stuff.
Yes.
And they know it.
Yeah.
And so skilled investor probably understands a lot of the different terminology that goes along with market investing.
I would even venture to say that a skilled investor minimally does it with their own portfolio, possibly even friends and family, maybe even they're in the industry.
Maybe.
And they feel confident and they know this and they love it and this is what they do.
And again, it doesn't equate to the actual results they may get.
Not
the results
always.
may vary based on different things, but it's just they're skilled in the language and the knowledge of different strategies and words and techniques.
All right. So next we have the dabbler, which we do encounter a lot of dabblers in our industry.
A lot of dabblers.
The internet and different platforms has made it so easy to dabble in a lot of things, right? I can dabble in a lot of things: copywriting, art, music. There's karaoke I use all the time. I can do anything. Now you can dabble in your financial stuff, and you can do it online. And we have a lot of people who come in and they may know a lot, but not as much as the skilled person.
I call it, enough to be dangerous.
That's probably true.
And the dabbler, that's the thing, they may think they know a lot, but it's like peeling an onion. It's like they know one thing, but then there's another and another and another. It can get very complicated and very intense. And so the dabbler is kind of dabbling here or there. Maybe they watch the financial shows. Maybe they watch the crazy guy on one of the stations has all the sound effects, giving some stock tips. And they're like, so they're dabblers, and they're dabblers for a reason,
Yeah. And nothing wrong with any of these, by the way. We're just identifying so that maybe you out there can say, oh, yeah, that's me. So, okay, the next thing, we have the novice, which we hope we encourage a lot of the novices to listen up and perk up their ears. Novice is somebody who interested, but very new. They're
interested and they want to learn, and they really have that eagerness to learn, but they're novice. And so, again, you don't know what you don't know. They're not necessarily in the business, but a novice could be dangerous too, because one bad mistake can really affect their financial future.
And here's the thing about a novice. You could go down the rabbit hole of the internet and look up stuff and get very wrong information. I really like artificial intelligence, AI, as we've all known and love it, but I don't know if any of you out there are using any kind of AI stuff. But at the bottom, after you put in your AI question, it says, the answers on this app could be wrong. And so that's something like whenever you look up anything on Google, I feel like in the back of your head, you should be thinking, and everything I just looked up may not even be right. So that's the thing. If you're a novice, you need to look where you get your information, making sure it's credible.
And you bring up a great point. Look, everybody has an opinion.
That's true.
And just because people have an opinion doesn't mean that opinion's right
or
wrong, or right or wrong for you in your personal situation. So, this is the dangerous part. You got to be careful with opinions out there, because, they could really, really give you down the wrong path.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say, like, if you put in Mother Teresa was a good person, you'll get, hundreds of thousands of hits.
Right.
But you can put in Mother Teresa was a bad person and still get thousands of hits on the internet. Got to be really careful.
I just have to, can I share a personal story? I don't even know if I told you this. So my family was in the ice cream business, created an ice cream.
Yeah, I knew that.
I needed a picture of my grandmother for something because I was doing something, and I put her in, and a woman showed up as my grandmother. It was not my grandmother. Wow. And she showed up like 5 times as my grandmother and the company that they owned.
Holy
And
cow.
I was like, that is not my grandmother. Now, there were some right pictures of my grandmother, and so I knew that. I know who my grandmother, I knew what she looked like. So right then and there, she popped up really quick, this woman who's not my grandmother. So there you go. So I'm telling you right now as we speak.
You got me. I had this vision, and sometimes even the experts are guessing.
I know.
Years and years ago, doctors actually recommended smoking.
This is
Remember
true.
that? There were ads about smoking from doctors.
Listen,
and obviously it's not a good habit. It's not a healthy habit, but things change.
Things change.
So you gotta be careful.
One of my first doctors had me in his office. We were talking. He was smoking a cigarette while he was talking to me. Don't even. I mean, that was years ago. I probably will age myself now. Okay, and then
do what's comfortable for you.
That's true. Okay, the last type of investor, which I think is really the most important one to identify, and I'm not even sure they're watching, but I hope they are, is the indifferent, right? Someone who, actually, I'll admit that I was pretty indifferent while my kids were growing, our kids were being raised. I really was so focused on the raising of my children, I was very not in the whole financial aspect of our marriage, and I was somewhat indifferent. It's not that I didn't care, but I had other things more pressing, so I'm not being negative, it was just my interest and attention was so focused in another area.
And indifferent doesn't mean bad, but
That's
I'll
what
give
I'm
you an
saying,
example.
yeah.
Someone's putting money every week or bi-weekly into their 401k. They get a statement. They don't really look at it. They file it
That's
away.
a good
Or they
point.
leave a company and they leave the old 401k behind in the old company. They don't even know what's going on with it. Look, they just want to go out and enjoy life, and they want their money to grow. They don't want to lose it, but they're not really paying attention to it.
Yeah.
So they're kind of indifferent to it.
So it's really important to go over some, we've got some general definitions that we want to go over. We want to keep it general. We want to keep it just educational and informative.
Informative and educational.
But we always use the analogy of your car, right? Like you get in your car, you turn on the car, that's what you need to know. The key turns on the engine, or the fob turns on the engine. You need to have it nearby. Boy, cars have changed, right?
You want your car to take you from A to B.
Right.
And during your driving from A to B, you're not thinking about how the car works and all the little parts of the engine. You just want the car to do its job.
But
you know about it.
You know about it.
You know a lot of times what kind of car it is. You know when you need to fill it up with gas. You know when you need to do an oil change. But you just want the car to do its job.
That is such a good analogy for having a grasp of your financial situation, right? We don't need you to know the weeds, but it'd be really great if you understood the general workings of a financial portfolio and some of the financial terms. And believe me, there's a lot. But we're going
more
over
than we could cover today.
Yeah, we can't cover. Yeah. But we're going over some general ones that we think pop up, especially as it relates to retirement.
When we meet clients, these things pop up all the time.
Yeah.
And the first one, it can be a very confusing term because the government really uses this, called qualified versus non-qualified accounts. What are they talking about? Qualified, non-qualified? Nobody really knows.
Right.
the government has a term called qualified or non-qualified, and that's a thing. And people look at their accounts, they have no idea if it's qualified or non-qualified. Let's kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah, so qualified accounts are accounts that qualify for some tax breaks, right? So because there are certain types of money, they're not taxed. And a good example would be...
Well, they are taxed, but
not now. Deferred. We're kicking
a lot of them are deferred. So, yeah, a good example would be your 401k, your IRA, your 403b. These are called
457.
457.
Yeah.
Even Roth is called a qualified account.
Roth is, yes.
Because there's some tax situations and advantages through the federal government. And the federal government is a terminology they use qualified.
Right.
Versus non-qualified just doesn't, a non-qualified doesn't.
Is taxable.
It's not that it's taxable or not, but non-qualified would be more money. It's not in a 401k or an IRA.
Well, I would say all your other money, your checking, your savings.
I think when they talk about qualified is the important thing. They're talking about 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, 457, even Roth to that point.
Yeah, it's
Those are called qualified in the eyes of the government.
Yeah, and it's important term to know. Especially if you're starting to plan your retirement, you want to make sure you understand what the title of the account is, especially if you're speaking to a professional. We need to know that. That's important information.
There are rules, and this will lead into the next one. There are rules around qualified accounts. One is if you take the money out before 59 and a half, in most cases, you're going to be penalized. These are money you're really not supposed to use until you're over 59 and a half. Now, if you don't want to take the money out, the government eventually makes you take it out, which is another term all the time we use. It's called RMDs.
This is true.
And what does that stand for?
So RMDs stand for Required Minimum Distributions. And right now, if you're 73 years old, it's time to start paying the government the taxes. They're no longer willing to wait.
So it changed, there was this whole Secure Act 1.0, Secure Act 2.0.
Right.
And it used to be years ago 7.5. Now it's currently 73. At 73, you've got to take some money out of your qualified accounts, other than a Roth, right? You've got to take money out of your qualified accounts. The government's going to force you to take it out. It is based on life expectancy.
Yeah, there's a calculator.
I'm going to say generally about 4% when you start at 73, generally give or take. But if you don't take it out, there's they'll penalize you.
They'll penalize you. No, there's actually a calculator on the irs.gov website that you can calculate your RMDs. It's called the RMD calculator. So that's a free resource, and you can go check it out. Of course, we always say make sure you get the help of a professional. But if you want to go check out what your RMD is, it's the value of your account on the December before the year you're in.
Right.
Just so you know, December 31st.
And again, RMDs required minimum distributions. It brings me up another one.
Yes.
Inherited IRAs.
Yeah.
So, someone dies, they leave an IRA to a non-spousal beneficiary. It's called an inherited IRA. There are different rules of you taking that out when you're a non-spousal beneficiary, and it's called an inherited IRA.
Now, and this is interesting because I just spoke to a person much smarter than me who's in the tax side of business. And so now the new rule based on the Secure Act 2.0 is if you inherit an IRA, 10 years, you have to use it, deplete it, get rid of it.
You have to take it all out within 10 years. You take it out 1 year, but you have within 10 years.
After 10 years, it's a problem.
Completely taken
but
out.
Here's the kicker, which a lot of people don't realize. It starts from the day the person passed. Not when you take that 2 months later after all the information has been hashed out and you've claimed it. It's from the death date.
Right.
So that's important.
Look, get professional advice.
A lot of rules.
We're not giving you... today's about information. So please get professional advice, but we're just covering different things. Now, a Roth IRA, right?
I love Roth IRAs because I think they're a really powerful tool, especially if you don't like paying taxes. So explain what the Roth IRA is.
A Roth IRA, the idea of a Roth IRA is it can grow tax deferred, and when you take it out, you could take it out tax free, but you have to pay the taxes on the money before you put it in. Like a 401k IRA, you put in the money in your pre-tax money. A Roth IRA, you already paid the tax on the money, but it's going to grow, and you could take it out tax-free based on different qualifications.
Yeah, there's different limits and contribution limits and things like that based on age, based on employment status. But
now, tax-free is a great word.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and that is, a lot of people don't realize the power of the Roth, and I think it's a really great thing.
And the only downside of the Roth is, you can't contribute too much to it. There's limits. But there's nothing called a Roth conversion.
I was just about to say that. That's a really good thing for everyone to know.
That's why we're married for 34 years, because we read each other's minds.
We're on the same mind. Yeah, we got the same mind.
But a Roth conversion is a way where you can actually take some of your qualified IRAs,
IRA money.
401ks,
Yes.
or retirement money that was pre-tax, pay the taxes on it and convert it to a Roth.
Yeah.
So again, it gets a little technical. You need professional advice. We actually have a calculator for our clients where we're able to show a Roth conversion and how it works out.
Yeah.
But
it's a nice
it's
option,
important.
and it's important to know it. You don't need to know every little detail. Just know there's a way to change your IRA, 401k, 457. Certain things apply, restrictions apply, into a Roth, which becomes then tax-free money later on down the road.
I hope this is helping everyone with definitions. I really do.
I always find definitions to be really important. You know, I think it helps you understand the general workings, just like we were saying about a car.
I don't want to put people to sleep with these things. I just want to.
We could be running and people could be snoring. Hey, compounding growth. You always call it, what is it, the fourth wonder of the world or something?
No, I think it's like the eighth wonder.
Oh, the eighth one.
Right? It's a lot of wonders we haven't seen.
Maybe the pyramids or I don't know.
But compounding growth is amazing because what you're doing is, if you've got, $100,000 and it grows 5%, now it's 105, and then it grows another 5%, it's growing 5% on the 105. And then it's approximately 111. And it's just compounding growth can build a portfolio really, really great, except for one thing. What were you going to say?
No, I know what you're thinking.
you know,
uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
See, what people don't understand about compounding growth, it's got to be uninterrupted compounding growth. Because when you have a loss in the equation, it ruins the compounding growth.
Yeah.
But compounding growth in and of itself, always going forward, you're growing on top of growing on top of growing. And that's why, over time, it's the eighth wonder of the world.
I want to bring up another term that I think is important.
Okay.
Let's not assume people know. Interest. Interest. What is interest, right? I believe it or not, I do think there are people there that, especially indifferent. What is interest?
I'm interested in you. Interest is earnings on your money that is more of a permanent earning, right? So gains. If you really talk about this, right? So, someone gains some money in their investments. It could be temporary, right? If you're still in that investment, it goes down, the gains are gone,
losses,
right? Or the losses, right?
Right.
Interest is something that is permanent. So, the bank's giving a CD and it's earning 4% interest. Well, on your $100,000 in a year, now you made $4,000. That's yours to keep. The gains you get are the gains you keep. So interest is more of a permanent growth to the money, where gains could be, temporary. And I like that. So a fixed interest rate is just what it is, right? It's an interest rate. It's fixed. It's not moving. It's sometimes connected to a period of time, but it's what a financial institution is going to give you as growth on the money that you've got at that institution. Right. Like you said, not like gains in the stock market. No, very different. So I mean, right now we're talking about a time where interest rates are relatively better than they used to be. So maybe CD rates, which people used to, is like a fixed interest rate. Typically, is a short-term interest rate. 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So let's say you have a 3-year CD paying 5%. Great, that's a fixed rate.
Right.
After 3 years, it's going to reset. So you got to take a look at it. But people so used to CDs from the banks. There's also another fixed rate interest vehicle that they use called fixed annuities. And fixed annuities are very similar to CDs. They're just a guaranteed fixed rate interest for a short term, but they're offered by insurance companies. Sometimes they have better rates.
Yes.
Sometimes it goes tax deferred that we talked about.
That's
tax deferred.
Because it's taxable if the money is like if the money you open the CD with is taxable money, you're going to get taxed on the interest.
Right. So if you have this money, $100,000, and it grows by 4%, and now it's 104. Well, if it's taxable money, if it's non-qualified and it's taxable, you're going to get taxed on that $4,000. So you don't really make $4,000.
Right.
Now, in a tax-deferred account, like a fixed annuity, the 104. You're making $4,000. Now the 104, you will pay taxes down the road when you take it out, but the compounding growth on the 104 the following year. So tax deferred.
I was just going to say you threw out a mumbo jumbo word.
I know.
Tax deferred is exactly what it sounds like.
You're deferring the taxes to later on, which allows you to help the compounding growth.
Very important when it comes to retirement planning and your plan. You don't need to know the details, but you need to know it exists. So that when you are ready or looking at your current portfolio, hey, do I have this in my portfolio? Because if you don't, it's something you might want to consider.
Yeah, definitely.
Important stuff. Okay, we talked about fixed rate. We talked about compounding. Right. We talked about deferred.
Let's talk about the big D, diversification.
Yeah, this is another big word that's thrown around in the industry a lot. If you watch those guys or women on TV, the talking heads of the financial world, they're talking about diversify.
Right.
But their definition of diversify is a lot different than what you and I consider diversify, which is okay. I'm not,
The ultimate goal of diversification is to limit risk. You ever hear that say, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So, if you have one investment, it can go up or down, right? But if you have many different investments, they can hedge each other out. So the idea of diversification is to limit your risk. My attitude, though, is if all your diversification strategies are all risk and can go up and down, you're really not having safety through diversification. That's a little different, right? But diversification has changed over the years. Look, the world we live in has changed.
Yeah.
The way we watch movies has changed. The way we listen to music has changed. The way we watch TV has changed, right?
Yes.
So diversification strategies have changed over the years as well. And I think it's really important to be up and up on the newer diversification strategies because there's newer financial vehicles in the market that can really help you diversify and create safety.
Yeah. So it's like when one part of your account's doing another, traditionally the other part is doing the opposite, so that you're not all going down at the same time.
Right.
Like
That's
you said,
the concept of the idea.
That's the concept,
of it, right?
And like you said, I definitely think it's
Lot of-
changed, and a lot of. I think COVID really affected a lot of this. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed since COVID. The
definitely.
way
The
things
whole
are
world has
affected,
changed,
everything has changed. Hey, indexes. It's not. I would say that the dabblers and the skilled people know what an index is. Maybe the novices and the indifferent don't. So what's an index?
There are many, many different indexes, and they're usually a combination of a bunch of securities or stocks or bonds. But I'll give you a quick example of the most popular ones that you and I, everybody hears on the news. The Dow was up, the Dow was down. That's an index.
Yeah.
30 different stocks in the Dow. The S&P 500. 500 different stocks in the S&P. The NASDAQ, more of a tech index. There are many, many different indexes, and they all do different things, but just realize that's what it is. It's an index, meaning a combination of different types of investment stocks.
I almost think of like a Rolodex. Now I'm really aging myself, but just like a bunch of different companies all bundled together in one place, trading within, and that's an index.
But when you hear it on the news, the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, just realize those are indexes, right?
They're indexes.
Just
They're indexes, and a lot of people use them in our industry.
Yeah.
We're not saying you need to know how they work. You just need to know their existence and that they're
know what an index is.
Often part of different employment plans. You might be in them. This is we mentioned it a few minutes ago, and I think it's important. Capital gains. What is a capital gain and long-term gains versus short-term gains?
Yeah, so gain's a gain, but is it long-term or short-term? There are different tax rates that you'll pay on long-term gains versus short-term gains, depending on what the money's invested in. I think that's the real key because the capital gains can change, and it can change based on the income you make. It can change based on government situations. But generally speaking, long-term capital gains, usually you pay less taxes than short-term capital gains. Again, this thing changes all the time, so we can't be specific about it, but just there's a difference of tax rates between short-term and long-term. So when you hear that terminology, or sometimes you get your statement and it could show short-term gains, long-term gains. So it's really important to have someone explain it to you, but just realize the terminology.
And we're not tax professionals.
No.
We're in the financial industry.
Today's
but we
about
have
information.
We have to give this information, and we have to know it ourselves when we're planning someone's portfolio.
Yeah.
So let's go into the returns, the word returns, average returns versus the real returns.
Well, I don't know if this is more of a technical mumbo jumbo, but it is something I think that's a little bit misunderstood. When someone uses average returns versus real returns, please understand there can be a difference of the amount of money you make, especially when there's a negative consequence to it. And I'll give you a really simplified example.
Yeah.
You've got $100,000. It goes down 50%. What do you have left?
You have
$50,000.
$50,000.
Now, if your $50,000 goes back up 50%, you're at $75,000. So you had 1 year plus 50 and 1 year of negative 50. Technically, your average return was zero. And if I said your average return is zero and you start with 100, you would think you have 100, but you have 75,000 because you had a negative in the equation.
Right.
So your average return and your real return can be very, very different. Your average return was zero, but your real return was you were down 25%. You follow me?
Right.
So please understand what I love about compounding growth, what I love about helping people grow their nest egg and financial independence is going forward without ever going backwards. Because every time you go backwards, you got to make it back.
Yeah.
So be very, very careful when someone says the average return Well, what was the real return? Because it'd be completely different in the results.
Absolutely. That's a good tip. Another big thing that comes up when people are planning retirement and looking at their portfolio is legacy and leaving their loved ones something behind, possibly accounts that they know will help their loved ones. And we refer to the people, the loved ones attached to the account, as beneficiaries.
Right.
Right. But there are a couple of different kind of beneficiaries.
Now, I want you to. I'm going to keep this really, really simple.
Yeah, because it could go down the rabbit hole.
There are many different subtitles of beneficiaries, but the two ones you deal with the most are what we call primary beneficiaries and contingent beneficiaries. The primary beneficiary, think about it, primary, which we,
it's the number, it's the first place, right? The first person in line to inherit whatever account you're going to leave to them, right? Now, it could be more than one person.
It could be more than one person. Right. And interesting, a lot of times in insurance type of investments or things that have beneficiaries bypass probate,
right? Which
is
nice.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
So here's one tip, though: make sure your beneficiaries are up to date. Sometimes people's life change, they get divorced, or they have an argument with one of their family members, and their beneficiaries listed as a primary beneficiary. Let me tell you, legally, if it's a primary beneficiary,
guess what?
Very hard to fight it.
I think I've said this before. I had a woman. She was with her company for 20 years. She was married at the time. She was going to move her 401k into something else. When she was doing it, she found out the beneficiary was her ex-husband from 10 years ago. She never updated. If something would have happened to her in that 10 years, her ex-husband, she was not thrilled. Yeah. But it's really up to, look, letters can go out, phone calls can try to be made, but the bottom line is you're in charge of your own accounts, really. I mean, you need to make sure that you're up to date, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that true?
Right, and then contingent is, the contingent, second in line, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's important to have the beneficiaries updated. There are some sub-terms with primary and contingent, but we're going to keep it simple.
Yeah.
The last thing real quick is Medicare and Medicaid. Look, Medicare is health insurance you get at 65, covers some doctors, hospitals. Medicaid, think of the last three letters. Aid is more welfare, so there's a difference. Medicare, care, Medicaid, aid. And with that, we want to kind of bring it to the close, right?
I think this is it. So we really hope that you found this helpful. We hope that you were somewhat enlightened and educated by all of this. We know it can be a lot. The good news is you can watch it again. You can take notes. You can pause it. You can watch it at your own pace. But our most important thing is we hope that this has inspired you, if you haven't already, to make a plan, even just with a paper and pencil. Sit down and look at what you've got and what you want to do and what your goals are. Hey, it's been a great show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into Smart Retirement. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time. Thanks.
Take care.
The preceding program was brought to you by Strategies for Wealth Management.
Nutmeg TV has been providing community television for over 30 years. We needed some studio upgrades, and Ion Bank believed in us. As a result of Ion Bank's financial help, we've been able to help others move on in a field that's difficult to get experience in. You're working with partners who understand who you are, and Ion Bank does that. They walk with us every day. It's community banking at its best.
Follow us on Instagram at nutmeg.tv.